Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Bad Kids Don't Exist. This is the podcast that helps adults better understand kids to create environments where kids and their caregivers thrive. My name is Stuart Perry. I go by Mr. Stu. I am a child therapist, a licensed clinical social worker, and an autism spectrum disorder clinical specialist, and I love helping adults better understand kids. I also travel around and speak at conferences and training and workshops to help adults understand kids because I find that most of the time when a parent is frustrated about being a parent, or a teacher is frustrated about being a teacher, or just someone who helps take care of kids is frustrated with those kids, it almost always comes from a misunderstanding of children, just who they are, what they're capable of, how their brains work. And so I'm here to help bridge that gap. This has become a recurring series on Bad Kids Don't Exist of me answering questions that get written in across all of my social media platforms. I'm most active on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. It's at Mr. Stu TV on all of those platforms. That's MISTERSTUTV. So if you have a question, feel free to write in to social media. You can DM me on any of those platforms, or you can also write an email to question@mrstutv.com, and I'll be happy to get to it. I do have some questions ready for today. If you have a question and you are watching live, feel free to put that question in the chat, and I will do my best to get to as many of those as I can. But I'm so excited to help you understand the kids in your life and some of the things that have been going on. Today, there are several questions that I get all the time, and so I'm so excited that they were written in so that I can answer them here on this platform, so that so many other people who probably have the question but just didn't write in the question, where you can hear it as well. Let's jump in to question number one. Here we go. Dear Mr. Stu, thank you so much for your videos. I feel like I understand my own kids and the kids I work with better because of watching you. Thank you so much. That's a huge compliment. I love making this content. I love putting it all out there. And again, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all at Mr. Stu TV. That's MISTERSTUTV. And if you watch, hopefully you will understand the kids in your life better. Here's my question. Lately, I've noticed that my child seems very anxious before going to school, often complaining of stomach aches and asking to stay home. It breaks my heart to see them struggling like this. What steps can I take to help alleviate their anxiety and make school a more comfortable place for them? This is a great question, especially right now at the start of the school year. There are so many kids who are anxious about going to school, maybe for the first time, or going back to school. It is so common that kids go through this where it's just difficult for them to feel comfortable in that school environment, especially as the school year gets going. One thing, before I jump into some tips on how to help your child tolerate their anxieties, is just to understand that anxiety is a totally normal thing and a very helpful thing at times. I'm not sure if you have gone to see Inside Out 2. If you haven't, that movie is great. There are so many excellent things in the movie. It helps kids understand emotions in other people. Great movie. If you haven't seen Inside Out 2, go see Inside Out 2 and take the little ones in your life. Or if it's not in theaters anymore, then get it however you can and watch it. It's a great movie. In that movie, anxiety shows up. And anxiety talks about how their job is to help you plan for these things that you don't quite see. Anxiety is there to help your brain get ready in case there might be danger. The problem that comes up with anxiety is when that happens too often or at too extreme of a level. But just because a child is feeling anxiety does not mean that they need medication for that anxiety. It does not mean that there is something hugely disruptive going on where they need professional help. Sometimes anxiety is just that. It's just an emotion that is experienced. So, all that to say this, just because your child is experiencing anxiety about school, it doesn't mean that there's anything huge going on that needs to be controlled and needs to be fixed right now. It's okay for kids to experience some discomfort, especially as they're trying new things or different things, or if it's been a while since they've done something. Anxiety can help them in those situations to be successful. There is a way to tell if that anxiety is too much. If the anxiety gets to a point where the child cannot do something because of the anxiety that's going on, or you mentioned some stomach aches, if those stomach aches are happening often and it's all related to school, or if there's anxiety that is just too large to tolerate, if it's what we would say in the industry as developmentally inappropriate levels of anxiety, where it's a lot of anxiety placed on this child where they can't function, then it's time to seek out some professional help for that anxiety. But if it's just the start of the school year and it's just that your child is feeling nervous about going to school, and yes, it's causing some disruption, but they're eventually able to get on that bus or get in the car and go to school and make it into school, then at that point, it's about supporting the child so that they can tolerate that anxiety. And once they're able to tolerate that anxiety for a period of time, that anxiety will start to go away because the child will see, oh, what I thought was going to be really scary or what I thought was going to be dangerous isn't. So I don't need to have that same level of worry about it now. I see that I was wrong. My first impression was wrong. I don't have to be as nervous about that thing. And there are some ways that you can help support a child as they are dealing with their anxiety. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to go seek professional help just because your child is nervous about something. It's not something that requires a pill, but you can work with your child and talk with your child about the ways that they're feeling. If they are saying, oh, my stomach is really upset, I don't know if I can make it to school today, you can ask them questions and talk with them about that specific feeling. You can make sure that they are able to share with you their thoughts that are related to this emotion that are causing these difficulties. You can ask them what are some of the things that they're thinking about. If they say, oh, I've got this, my stomach is hurting and I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to school today because, and you can tell that it's that nervousness, you can say, oh, so tell me some of the things you're thinking about. Tell me how school has been. Tell me about some of the things that happen at school. Tell me some of the things that you're thinking are going to happen today at school. And have that conversation with them where they're able to share about those things. And then as they share, you can support them and say, oh, it does sound like there are some things that have you feeling nervous. I understand that. Oh, it sounds like you might be scared about your presentation that you have to give today. You might be nervous about the test that's coming up. You're nervous that there aren't going to be some of your old friends at school this year. I get that. It can be tough, can't it? Yeah, that stomach ache feeling, I understand. It sounds like you're feeling nervous. Yeah, it can be tough when you're feeling nervous to still want to go to school, but you got to go today, and I know you can make it. What's one thing? Do you see how that conversation can go with a child where they are sharing with you about all these different feelings and thoughts that they're having, and you're just there as support, letting them know it's gonna be okay, and that triggers into their brain, you know what, all these things that I am having this anxiety about, maybe it's all gonna be okay. And if they say it's gonna be okay, you know what? I trust them, and so I'm willing to give this a shot. And then they go to school, and guess what? All their worst case scenarios don't happen. And that happens for several days in a row, and then they're able to see all those things that I was worried about and all those things that I thought were gonna happen, they didn't end up happening. So all this anxiety that I have bottled up inside of me, maybe it's not quite worth it. And as they're able to understand that and they're able to tolerate that anxiety, then they're able to tolerate greater levels of anxiety. Now, if the anxiety is huge, it is just wildly out of proportion to what you would expect from a child who does not have some type of disorder going on, then it's time to get some professional help. If those symptoms go on for a long time, if they're having stomach aches and headaches and nervousness for an extended period of time, it's time to seek out professional help. Or if it's causing them to not be able to participate in life, not just making it difficult, but causing them to actually not be able to go do some of the things they need to be able to do, then it's time to go get some professional help. Until then, let them know that anxiety is a normal part of life, that it's okay to feel nervous about things, and sometimes that nervousness can give you energy to do some things, or it can help you to be successful when you're able to keep it under control. Support them, have those conversations about their feelings, and then over time you'll see that their anxieties come down. Thank you so much for that question. Hopefully that answer was helpful, that it's okay to let kids experience anxiety, and then as they experience it, they'll actually get better at dealing with it, and they'll be able to tolerate it at greater levels over time. Thanks for the question. Remember, if you have a question for me, you can write in on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Mr. Stu TV. That's MisterStutv. Or you can write an email to question@MrStuTV.com, and I'll get to it there. Or if you are watching live, feel free to put your questions and comments into the chat. I'd love to answer or respond. Here is question number 2. Dear Mr. Stu, I follow you on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Wow, thank you so much for checking out all the different platforms. And I see your posts about your handsome service dog, Stark. Oh, yes, he is the best. Stark is just absolutely the best. Oh, let's see what this is, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about Stark too. I have a question about service dogs. Recently, I've noticed that my child seems much... Oh, there he was just now. Did you hear his bark? Recently, I've noticed that my child seems much calmer and happier when our neighbor's friendly dog is around. It's as if a weight lifts off their shoulders during those moments. This has made me wonder if an ESA, that's an emotional support animal, or a service dog might be beneficial for them. Could you provide some insight into how these animals could help and what steps we would need to take to explore this option? Yes, I love talking about service dogs. I do have a service dog. You know what? I'm just going to let him come in here. Stark! Come here, bud. Stark, come. Come here. Come here, place. Stark, place. Hey, place. Yes, good boy. This is Stark. Yes, right into the microphone, buddy. This is Stark. This is my service dog. He is the best. He is a German Shepherd. He's a 130-pound German Shepherd, and when I do therapy, he is with me for every single session that I do, and he is with me almost all of the time. He is my service dog. Good boy. Out. Good boy. Oh, I love Stark. So that's Stark. Sorry for the brief pause, but can't you just say he is just amazing. Stark is incredible. Let's talk a little bit about service dogs, emotional support animals, training, all that kind of thing. Stark is a registered service dog with the United States Service Dog Registry, and He's awesome. I have a disorder that's called panic disorder that causes me to slip into panic attacks. And yes, Cassie Stark says hey to you too. uh, where if I am about to have a panic attack, Stark can alert me that a panic attack is coming on. If I'm slipping into a panic attack, Stark is trained to do some things to help alleviate that panic attack. And if I have a severe panic attack and I'm about to pass out, Stark is trained to do some different things where he can make sure that I'm safe if I were to fall. I can fall actually onto him, and then he will lower me to the ground so that I don't hit my head, and then he can go get help. Stark is trained for all those things. He also does my sessions with me. We are trained in what's called animal assisted play therapy. So he actually helps me with my sessions and he plays with kids, and it is just amazing. So I have no doubt that if your child has found a friendly animal, it can be of benefit to them. Animals are great for so many different reasons, and especially for children who just have a lot going on in their little minds. Animals can be incredible companions. So it's great to know that your child has found someone who, an animal who they can get along with and that they can feel supported by. Let's talk a little bit about emotional support animals and service dogs, the differences, and then see if one of these might be of a good benefit to your child. First thing to understand is that emotional support animals and service dogs are not the same. They are different in a lot of different ways. And I let you know that Stark is a registered service dog with the United States Service Dog Registry. You don't have to register a service animal, but in the agency that I work for, it was just easier for me to go through some of the paperwork process if he got registered. So Stark is registered. If you have a service dog, you don't necessarily have to register that dog. The registry just helps provide a little bit of support if there's ever anything that comes up about your service animal. And there's a few benefits to some membership to those organizations, but it's not required. If you have a service dog, the way to distinguish between an emotional support animal and a service dog is that an emotional support animal is an animal that helps you feel more calm or more able to face things. They are there to support you emotionally. I would argue that every animal, every loved animal in a family is an emotional support animal. Every animal is that. Who doesn't feel better when their pet is around? If you love your pet, you want them around you. And that's really an emotional support animal. It might have some special training just to stay more calm and things like that. But for the most part, it's just, hey, I feel better. I feel more confident. I feel more able to do things. I want to go do more things when my animal is around. That is an emotional support animal. And there's no specific requirements of an emotional support animal. It just really is that you feel more comfortable when your animal is around for any number of reasons. They support you emotionally. The flip side is a service dog. A service dog is actually trained to provide a service to their handler. It's not just that you feel better with the animal around, in my case, my dog, but my dog is actually trained to provide a service to me, and I have a disorder that meets the requirements for one of those services. People who cannot see have service dogs that help them see, that can walk them around and can help them help them navigate their surroundings. There are dogs who are trained for diabetes, where they can smell if insulin levels are off, and they can actually go and get an insulin kit. They're trained to provide a service. And there are a few more requirements of service dogs. It's not that there's a specific training required, and it's not that you have to prove anything, but in order to have a service dog, you have to have a condition that a service dog would apply to, and the dog has to be trained to provide a service. There are also some distinctions between protected groups. So emotional support animals are actually not protected. What that means is emotional support animals don't just get to go everywhere. Now, in our world today, luckily, there's a lot of places that are opening up to allow different emotional support animals to come around. But an emotional support animal is not protected, and places don't have to let you bring your animal in just because they are an emotional support animal. It's not a protected class. On the other hand, service dogs are protected. Stark is allowed to go anywhere that I am. But with that comes some responsibility. There are some times where people want a service dog or they want an emotional support animal and they want to take their dog out to all these different things, but they don't put training into their dog. You are responsible for everything that your animal does, even if they are an emotional support animal or a service dog. That means that you need to make sure you are aware of the limits of what your dog or animal can and cannot handle, and that you don't take them out into situations that could get them or you or both in some trouble. For instance, Stark is a service dog, but that doesn't mean he's perfect and never has any moments where he kind of loses control of himself. Stark barks. He still barks, and it's something that we have consistently worked on for him to not be as reactive in his barking, but he does not do well if there are other dogs around. And he can get himself back under control, but his initial reaction is to bark pretty loud. So, I don't take him out to different places where we might see situations or we might be placed in situations that could cause him to fail or that could cause a huge scene. It's not because I don't think that I would be better off with him there. It's just that I know I'm still responsible for everything that he does, even while we're out in public, even though he is a service dog. And it's also important to consider if your child might have a disability for that a service dog could be qualified for. So if your child meets those requirements, then they can get a service dog. And in order to train the dog, there's lots of different places that do service dog training. And you can also look up different things on how to train service dogs, and you can kind of train them in your own way to provide the different services that your child might need. And then that's how a service dog works. Again, you don't have to register them. You don't have to do anything special. It just means this dog is trained to me to provide a service to me because of a disability. Now, you can also go the other route and you can provide your child with an emotional support animal. Just know that doesn't mean they're going to be able to take them everywhere. And really, emotional support animal, service dog, whatever, if you feel like your child is responsible enough, and you feel like your child could benefit from just a pet, they don't have to be an emotional support animal or a service dog. You don't have to label them as that. They can just be a great pet that really is there to support your child. I think sometimes people misunderstand this concept and they think that their pet has to become an emotional support animal, or we have to call them an emotional support animal in order for them to be helpful. That's not true. Animals are amazing. So think about what could be best for you and for your situation. Does your child meet those criteria of what it takes to get a service dog? Do you want to put all the training into training the dog or training the animal? Or would you rather go that route with the emotional support animal? Or could it be great just to have an awesome pet added to your family? So, emotional support animals are different from service dogs. There are different protections for each, and there's different requirements for each one. But in the end, you get to choose what is best for you, and there's not a whole lot of restrictions on service dogs and on emotional support animals, and the restrictions are coming down more and more every single day. But maybe you just need a great pet. Thank you so much for that question. I'm so glad I got to show off Stark as well. Isn't he so handsome? He is just the best. I love him so much. He is truly the best thing that's happened to me. He is awesome. I absolutely love Stark. Let's go on to question number 3. Dear Mr. Stu, thanks for all your videos. You're welcome. I'm hoping to be able to see you at one of your live trainings or speaking events soon. Yes, I'm traveling all over. You can head to my website. It's badkidsdon'texist.com. You can go there and there's a link that says calendar. You can click there and see all the different places that I'm going to be as those are coming up. There are a lot, you all. So if you would like to see me live, I might be in your area coming up soon. Check out that calendar and see if there's something nearby. I would love to see you there. Here's my question. Lately, I've noticed that my teenager spends more time in their room and seems less interested in sharing their day with me like they used to. Oh, I miss our conversations and worry about what's causing this change. Could you help me understand what might be going on and how I can encourage more open communication between us? If you are the parent of a teenager, you have felt this question. As kids get older, it is so sad sometimes to see them start to drift further away, but that's also the whole goal. My parents say that their whole goal in raising me was that one day they would no longer need me. As a therapist, that's what I say to my clients. It is so sad sometimes for me to have a client who I've worked with for quite some time and they're leaving me. But it also makes me so happy that I've provided some supports where they no longer need me. So if your child is around teenage age and they're just kind of moving into that phase where they're moving away from you, it can be really hard, but take it as a little bit of as a little bit of a compliment that you have set them up to be able to have some more distance from you. And yes, it is completely typical teenage behavior for a lot of different reasons. In teenagers' brains, their brains actually tell them to start listening to adults less, especially their parents or their primary caregivers. It tells them to stop listening to those voices. Because of evolution, the reason that takes place is because in earlier stages of our development as a species, kids around teenage age were about to leave their parents. So their brains were telling them, hey, you need to start listening to them less. You got to start figuring out your own stuff. You got to start making your own decisions. You got to start doing all of this by yourself more. So their brains are telling them, stop listening to these people. They don't know what you know. And maybe that's what your teenager thinks is you don't know anything about being a teenager. You don't really know me, whatever it might be. And you know that you do know about being a teenager and that you do know them and that you do love them. But their brain is telling them, don't listen to that. We got to go do our own thing. So it's built in a great way. It's built for a very important reason. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt when a child who maybe you used to be so close with and you used to do everything with, and now they're starting to drift away. If that happened all at once immediately and there was just this huge change in a week's worth of time and this is happening out of nowhere, that might be something to explore further. But if this is just something that over the past several months they've just started to spend more time by themselves or with their friends and they're starting to talk to me less, and it seems like they're doing well across everything, but they just don't want me in their life as much. That's completely typical. It's completely appropriate, and it's not something to panic about. But there are some ways that you can build communication between you and your teenager. Even though they're going to think that you have no idea about what it is that they're going through, or they'll think that you have no clue about the different problems that they have going on in their lives. There are some ways that you can open up some more communication with teenagers. And the number one thing that you can do is to direct less, so don't give as much instruction, but to ask more questions. and to explore things more with them rather than giving them advice, or rather than giving them more instructions or telling them how to handle it. Explore it with them and let them come to those conclusions on their own. Their brains are hardwired to say that what you say is wrong and they shouldn't follow it. So if you are giving more directives, if you're giving more instructions, if you're giving more advice, their brains are going to say, nope, we are not following that. But if you are engaging them in a back and forth conversation where it's not that you're telling them what to do, you are asking them what they think they should be doing, or you're asking them about their day and different things that they would like to do, not trying to give them more instructions and advice, but really exploring their life with them and seeing what they think about it and the ideas that they have about it. They'll be much more open to communication with you. That's the number one thing, is give less directives and engage in a back and forth more. And another thing that you can do is actually schedule that time. Teenagers, as much as they might say that this is wrong, they do follow routine and they do enjoy routine. So if you can set a time each day where you're going to have this conversation just about how things are going, again, not to give instructions, not to give advice, but really just to explore it with them, then they'll be more open to it, because they'll be like, oh, here's the part of the day where mom asks me all these questions and she talks to me about my day, and they'll pretend that they hate it, but they do like that you are caring about what their perspective is. And that's the whole point, is it's not to tell them how they should be feeling or tell them what they should be thinking or tell them what they should be doing, but really exploring these things with them. And if you'll do that, they'll be much more open to the conversation. But I can also tell you that it might be a while before the conversation opens back up fully. There does come a shift again in kids, much older kids, but a shift happens where they then see, I have developed myself, I'm ready to reintroduce myself to my parents, and now we can have this open dialogue again. Again, that happens later in life, but if you will support them through this phase and really engage them more, engage them in a back and forth more, then they will be much more likely to want to talk to you about things, because they'll see you're not trying to come down on them, or you're not trying to tell them what to do. You really are just wanting what's best for them, and you're wanting to support what it is that they have going on. Hopefully that is helpful, because it's a difficult thing. And so many times as parents, it can just feel like, oh, my little baby is slipping away from me, and they are. But that's a great, great thing. And it's nice to know that if you have set your child up for success, it does mean that they need you less, as tough as that can be. Thank you very much for that question. Thanks for writing in. Let's go on to question number 4. Dear Mr. Stu, I am both a teacher and a parent. Whoo, you got a lot going on. Let's see. And Cassie, you are saying, oh, that is such a great idea. Cassie is saying that she connects by texting memes back and forth with her kids. That is such a great idea, to be able to communicate just in a silly way. And it could be, send me the meme of how you're feeling today. Oh, great. Great tip there, Cassie. Thank you so much for that. All right, on to question number 4. Dear Mr. Stu, I am both a teacher and a parent. That sounds like a lot of living that you do. And I am seeing a trend happen that you seem to address in some of your videos. The trend is that it doesn't seem like kids are able to just get along with each other. Oh, there is a trend there, isn't there? I've observed that my kids have been bickering more than usual, often over the smallest things, like who gets to use the TV remote, which, let me tell you this, that is not a small thing to a kid. That is not a small thing at all to a kid. Who gets to use the TV remote? That means you get dibs on everything that people are watching. You get dibs on volume. That's not a small deal to a kid. So let's reframe that just real quick. It might be small to you, but to them, that's a big deal. It's becoming quite stressful for everyone at home, and I worry about the impact this might have on their relationship. What strategies can I use to help them get along better and foster a more harmonious environment at home? I can tell you're a teacher by the vocabulary that you used. Yes, this happens all the time, and especially as kids are getting older, which that's what they do. They don't get younger, they get older. As kids get older and they start to understand the world a little bit more and they start to understand their siblings a little bit more, there does seem to be that trend to more fighting rather than less fighting. And then eventually there's less fighting, but it's kind of no fighting, we get along, we do great, and then this pretty long period of a lot of fighting, and then it starts to kind of come down more. So just know you are in the same boat as every other parent. That if you have more than one child, they're going to bicker with each other, they're going to fight with each other. Sometimes they are going to have knockdown, dragouts with each other. It doesn't mean just to allow those things, but it does mean to understand that that's typical behavior at times. The other thing to understand is that kids are less engaged in real social situations now. Situations that we in mental health call in vivo, in real life situations. It just happens less. Most of the time, kids' interactions are happening online, or through a video game, through texting, through other means of communication rather than face to face. And because of that, they're less prepared to handle situations that come up face to face. They just haven't had as much practice with it. If you've watched any of my videos, you may know that one thing I say often is the first time you do anything, you'll be bad at it. And really the first several times you do most things, you're going to be bad at it. So just know kids are new at this and they're just getting their first shots at trying out how to get along with each other. So they're going to be bad at it for a while. They're going to bicker about seemingly small things. They might have big arguments or big fights about things that don't seem to be worth that much attention. Those things are going to happen, not because there's anything huge and major and difficult going on, but just because they're bad at it and they're learning how to get better at it, but they're going to mess up along the way. So fewer social situations overall, and even if they have had several social situations, they're still just kids. So they're still learning how to do this, and they're still just getting going at their practice of being able to resolve conflict with each other. But that's my advice to you, is to allow them to resolve that conflict with one another. When appropriate, or when possible, or when safe, if kids are allowed to resolve the conflict with each other, then they'll understand what is worth getting upset about and what is not worth getting upset about. Because if I get upset about it, no one else is going to handle it for me. I'm going to have to do the work. So if I am going to get upset about this, if I'm going to cause a big deal about this, if I'm going to argue about this, or if I'm going to say something about this person and nobody's going to resolve it for me, nobody's going to tell them what to do, nobody's going to tell me what to do, but I know I am going to have to resolve this situation, then it causes kids to think about, is this really something that I want to enter into? Because I know there's no safety net. There's nobody who's going to do it for me. And sometimes there's an increase in conflict, especially over those seemingly very small things and those just bickering fights back and forth, because adults have stepped in too often and resolved it for the kids. And so now they see like, oh, well, anything that I want to cause an argument about, or anything that I want to bicker about, or anything I want to fight about, it's okay. I don't have to use much energy. They're going to solve it all for me. I just get to do the fun part. I just get to do the argument. I don't have to do any of the cleanup. So if you cause kids to have to do more of the cleanup, then they will be more likely to decide before engaging in an argument if that argument is going to be worth the cleanup they're going to have to do. You can be there to mediate conversations. You can be there to help them work through it and help them come to a resolution, but you can help them do it rather than you doing it for them, rather than saying, you need to apologize, or you need to give that toy to your brother, or you need to leave them alone, or it's their turn with the remote. Rather than that, you can be there as they are working through the conflict, but they are the ones who are working through the conflict. Now, let me go back to what I said at the beginning of this question. The first several times that kids do this, they are going to be bad at it. They're going to come up with some things as punishments or as payback that are not appropriate, that are not good responses or positive responses to the situations that they've been put in. That doesn't mean stop letting them try. It just means that's why you're there, to help them mediate. If somebody snatched the remote from somebody else and you're there and you say, okay, let's see, how are you guys going to work this out? Kids' faces will be like, what do you mean? We're going to work it out. Yep, you're going to work it out. What do you think needs to happen? We're going to turn the TV off until you guys are able to figure out what needs to happen. I'm here. What do you think needs to happen? Do you see how much more responsibility you've placed on the child, but how that it's completely appropriate? Hey, you've chosen to argue about this thing. I'm going to help you resolve that argument. Let's see what's going on. What do you guys think needs to happen? And as you put that responsibility back on them, over time they'll be like, you know what? Last time that took 20 minutes to resolve it. It is not even worth. I will just wait until the next show, and that's when I'll get the TV remote. Because they'll see that required effort. Right now, you are the one putting in all the effort. And that's one of the things that can be very frustrating as a parent is, why are my kids bickering all the time? It's driving me crazy. Well, if your kids are bickering all the time and you are constantly feeling the need to step in and solve it for them, yes, it's going to feel very overwhelming and you are going to get burnt out real fast. But if they are constantly arguing and then you step in and you say, all right, let's see what you can come up with to resolve this. Now it's much less pressure on you as a parent. You are just helping them to navigate this conversation as they work it out. And it can even be a whole lot of fun. You might feel much less overwhelmed. And then over time, you'll be like, I cannot wait for them to get in their next argument because I get to mediate the conversation. It might not be like that. But over time, it becomes less responsibility and less pressure on you. And you are placing more responsibility and more pressure on them to take responsibility for these arguments that they started. It would be like if they go through and they trash a room, if you come along every time and you just clean up the room, well, why would they ever clean up the room on their own? The same can be true with arguments and especially bickering. If you are constantly the one doing all of the cleanup, what makes them want to do any of the cleanup? And yes, I'm going to make a mess because it's so much easier and it's so much more fun than just letting this go. Put some more responsibility on them to resolve their own conflict, and then you'll see the conflict come down and you'll see those social skills start to grow as they navigate those conversations together. There might still be times where you have to step in. If it ever becomes unsafe, or if there's ever actual physical aggression or violence, or it's just becoming hateful, definitely step in. That one was too big for them to handle on their own. But if it's just that bickering and just, little sibling fights and things like that, step in, help them figure it out together, and then you are taking responsibility off of yourself and placing it on them, and they have to own their actions. Great. Thank you so much for that question. Again, if you have a question, you can write in at Mr. Stu TV. That's MisterStu TV on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Or you can write an email to question@MrStuTV.com, and there I'll get to it. We are on the final question that I have set for today. Let's see what this one is. Dear Mr. Stu, I have seen a lot of your videos and notice you talk a lot about children's brains. Yes, I do. I love talking about kids' brains. Again, I'm here to help adults understand kids. And a lot of times we think that kids are just little adults and they have all the same stuff as adults. They just haven't grown up as physically large as adults. That's not true. It's important to understand kids' brains. So I'm glad that you noticed that trend. One thing I see you talk about a lot is the prefrontal cortex and how it's not quote unquote online in kids. I know that can cause some frustrating difficulties for us as parents and for them as children. I was wondering if my story has anything to do with the prefrontal cortex. Wow, you put a lot of things together there. Let's see what this is. The other day, while we were in an elevator with a few strangers, my child loudly commented on someone's appearance in a way that was quite embarrassing for me. Oh, okay. I'm concerned about how to address this with them and help them understand the importance of being considerate. How can I approach this situation to teach them about kindness and awareness in social settings? Wow. It is amazing to me that you put all those pieces together. And yes, it has everything to do with the prefrontal cortex. For those of you who haven't seen my videos where I talk about kids' brains, the prefrontal cortex is a part of the brain right behind the forehead, and it's responsible for what are called executive functions: time management, planning ahead, thinking through all of the consequences that could happen from a certain situation, being able to put together thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and nuances in language are all controlled in the prefrontal cortex. And that part of the brain is not connected until around age 12, and it doesn't fully connect until around age 25. And then it never stops developing unless you have a disorder until you are dead. So, yes, this nuances in language piece, it has everything to do with the prefrontal cortex. Let me break it down for you. This is one that I get asked a lot, and people don't know that they're going to ask me this question, but they tell me things like, my child said something hateful, or my child said something rude, and they're really asking, why in the world would they do that? I didn't raise them that way. And that's kind of what you're saying here, but you've put some of these pieces together. Yes, everything to do with the prefrontal cortex and those nuances in language. And I say that because sometimes kids say things that as adults we look at and we think, oh goodness, that was so rude or that was so disrespectful. And really the child is being very genuine, or they're being very honest, or they are just exploring their world and they're not trying to be rude or mean, or they don't really have a feeling about what they're saying. They are being so genuine in their conversation. I'll give you an example. There's times where especially very young kids will come in my office and they'll go, Mr. Stu, you're bald. And if it's a first session, then a parent is in there with them and their parent will say, oh, don't say that. And I look back at them and say, I am bald. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm bald, especially if that's coming out of a 5-year-old's mouth. A 5-year-old is allowed to say, Mr. Stu, you're bald. Now, they didn't go on to say, Mr. Stu, you're bald, that's stupid, you're ugly. But as adults, that's kind of what we put on to the kids, because we know that as adults, if we were going to say that to someone, if we were going to be like, you are bald, we know that the underlying context of that is you look bad. To a child, they're really not meaning that. Those nuances that happen in the prefrontal cortex are not happening for young children especially. So when they say something like, you're bald, that's all they mean by it. They just mean you're bald. I don't remember this happening, but my parents tell me that when I was very, very young, we went out to a restaurant and our waiter had missing teeth, had a lot of missing teeth, very few teeth left. They took our order and I looked and they said, anything else? And I looked up and I said, why are your teeth like that? And they said that they wanted to just melt into the ground and die right there. That they could not believe that I had just said that. but they could also understand I didn't mean anything by it. I was asking a genuine question. Why are your teeth like that? The waiter handled it perfectly from what they tell me. She said, "Well, it's actually because I smoke a whole lot, and this is one of the reasons that you should not smoke, honey. So that's why some of my teeth are gone. Does that make sense?" She handled it like a champ. She could tell I was really asking. To a little kid, those questions are important. They're really asking, I don't think that that's how I want my teeth to end up. So I was just wondering, why are your teeth like that? That's really what they're asking. They're asking out of some anxiety. Or when they see me and they see that I'm bald, they say, "Mr. Stu, you're bald." I actually just had a client yesterday say, "Mr. Stu, why are you bald?" And I said, "Well, it's because my hair fell out. That's what happens sometimes when you get older." And they said, "My hair has not fallen out yet." And I said, "No, it hasn't." And then we went right on and we played. They were being so genuine in their questions. Just because a child says something that an adult would not be allowed to say, or that an adult knows maybe you don't say, doesn't mean that they were wrong for saying it. There was another time I was on a cruise and I was on an elevator with a young family, a family who had very young children, and some older people. And one of the older ladies had a skin condition that caused her skin to show in some in spots. And the child looked up and said, "Oh, why is your face like that?" And you could tell the mom just died and just went like this, like, "Please let the elevator stop. Let the elevator doors open. I am about to crawl out of my skin. Please get me out of here." And the woman looked back at the child and she said, "I'm different, but I'm beautiful, just like you." She could understand that question was coming from a genuine place, and that child didn't mean anything hurtful or hateful by it. They really were just exploring their world. They're just trying to figure out what is going on in this wild, wild world of ours. Give them the benefit of that doubt. So if your child said something that you saw as rude or embarrassing, take a step back and see, did they really say something that was rude? Yes, it was embarrassing, so I'm not taking that from you, but did they really say something that was rude, or were they just exploring their world and what they said really is what they meant? There was no underlying hate. There was no underlying, "You're weird, you're bad." Just they really were exploring their world and figuring it out. If that's the case, you can give them an honest and genuine answer. "Mr. Stu, why are you bald?" "Well, as I got older, my hair fell out. And that happens to all the guys in my family. Our hair just falls out. It happens sometimes." That's it. That's my answer. If you can come up with those very genuine answers to children's very genuine questions, it will help them to see that it's not that people are bad or people are weird and different. Yes, people are all different, but different doesn't mean weird. They can start to see all that, and then they can understand their world a little bit better. So understand that authenticity in kids, and then you can have a conversation with them after that situation to talk with them about, "Hey, if somebody looked at you and said, 'Why is your face like that?' How would you feel about that?" And let them talk with you and say, "You know what? Maybe I would feel kind of strange if somebody just asked me, 'Why is my face like that?' Then that might make me feel kind of uncomfortable. So I don't want other people to feel uncomfortable." And do you see, they can come to that conclusion on their own. But if you just look at them and you say, "Why would you say that? Don't you ever say that? Don't you say that in front of," and they're just being genuine, what that tells them is that there's some things that I'm not allowed to talk about. And we don't want kids to feel that way. We want kids to know that they can come to us with anything that's genuinely on their minds and on their hearts. So rather than responding out of anger just because you felt uncomfortable, you can respond with genuineness and then have a conversation with them later about how to understand language a little bit better and how to understand how our words cause other people to feel if we use the wrong words. And that develops some of those executive functions in a child's brain. And once those are developing, then that part of the brain is coming online more and more and more, and you'll see them start to get better at it. Remember, kids are doing a lot of things, including seeing a lot of things for the very first time. If it's the first time they've seen something, don't expect them to get it right. They're going to get it wrong at first. Give them some grace, offer them a genuine response, and then talk with them about how their words can cause other people to feel. If you'll do that, then you'll be setting them up for success and you'll be building a stronger relationship with them as they develop more and more of those skills. Those are 5 questions that were written in this week. Thank you so much for those who wrote in on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Mr. Stu TV. That's MISTER STU TV, and emailing it in to question@mrstutv.com. If you have a question, feel free to send it as a DM on any of those platforms, write in an email, or even comment on this video. I see all of those things, and I pull questions from a lot of different places so that I can give you some answers from a child therapist. Hopefully this was helpful for you. I love helping adults better understand kids. If that sounds like a good match for you and an event that you might have coming up, whether it be a conference or a training or just some type of seminar that you are wanting to host for parents or for adults in children's lives, I would love to talk with you. You can head over to badkidsdon'texist.com/booking, and there you'll see all the information you need to hire me as a keynote speaker or a workshop leader for your next event. I would love to hear about that event and make your next event a great one. Until next time, keep doing your best to understand kids, let kids play, let kids make mistakes, and believe that kids are doing the best that they know how to do. If you'll do that, your frustration will come down so much, and you'll be setting those kids up for success. Until next time, make sure that you are giving that grace to the little ones. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.